Imam Sahib, like usual.
So today we have
yes.
Today we have a group of 5 Ahmadis from 4 different countries. The first one is Malik Hammond. He is from Ghana. Next is Shafiq Bannu from Mauritius. And next is Mr. Anthony Waters. His Muslim name is Tahir Ahmad from England.
From England?
Yes.
Where from England?
I'm living in Essex at the moment. Yes.
He joined the community in November last year. Yes. And next is Zahid Nepal from Mauritius.
That's right.
And next is Jamal Testamale from Japan, from France.
Originally from Tunis?
From
Morocco?
No, my wife from Morocco.
And you?
My mother was French and my father from Guinea in Africa.
Is that right?
But I was born in Paris.
Right. Your wife is from Morocco?
Yes, she is.
Yes, please. Have your first question.
One song?
Okay, Huzu, my question is, there are some people, when they want to pass away, they suffered a lot. Some people, when they want to pass away, they suffered a lot. That is through illness.
When they want to pass away?
Yeah.
When do they want to pass away?
That is...
when they pass away or when they want to pass away?
Okay, when they pass...
at the time of the passing away?
Yeah, at the time of passing away,
right.
they suffered a lot.
Yes.
Others also don't. They have just maybe a simple illness and that ends their life. Could you please explain this? Because I happened to be discussing with somebody and he said those who suffered a lot is a punishment from Allah. That is those who go through.
It could be, but it is not a rule. And anyway, it is not for man to judge. It's only Allah who judges. So suffering is a universal phenomenon. Suffering is of 2 or 3 types possibly in the context which you are presenting. One suffering is because of the thought of those whom one leaves behind. And if the attachment is stronger, the greater will be the suffering. The second type of suffering is because of a disease which essentially causes agony and pain, sometimes unbearable, like cancer, etc. And the third suffering is because of awareness of the entire life having passed, and yet one has not done enough to win the pleasure of God. Or maybe one becomes conscious of having earned the wrath of Allah instead of pleasure of God. So that is the suffering which would be specifically enhanced in case of certain criminals who according to the Quran will be coaxed by the angels. Okay, now this is what you have done all your life and this is what you sent ahead of you. So there are 3 possible suffering. Maybe there are other possible types of suffering, but that is what I have. I think are the major 3 categories. So your question, I see, it seems to be answered in this, isn't it?
My question is answered.
Good.
Thank you.
My question is about babies, and when they're very small, they can seem to be smiling and waving their hands at the air. A common explanation I've heard is that they're speaking and seeing angels.
No,
so
nothing to do with that.
You've answered my question then.
They are angels themselves.
Absolutely.
The babies are angels. Angels are those who cannot commit crimes and sins. So the babies are angels, as nearest to angel as man can be. Right?
Thank you.
Please.
Your Honours, recently a church leader in England said that unfortunately we are living in a generation in which church leaders are giving the impression that all religions lead to God. I would like your comments on that, if possible.
I think add the word should and the question is answered. All religions should lead to God. to that extent, I think even the bishop you are quoting, or whoever is, can have no objection against this. All religions should lead to God, but do they? This is the question, right? So, have I not answered your question? Or what else would you like to in this regard?
No, I think that's a very good response.
Please have an answer. Yes. Exactly. Please.
Sir. In Jamaat activities, we normally celebrate or use the solar year when we celebrate any Jamaat Jalsa Salana, like National Day and all that. I believe, well, I think that, why don't Ahmadis use this lunar year instead of the solar year to celebrate?
Because God has not specifically mentioned lunar years to be employed for keeping the count of days and nights, etc. by the Muslims. The Holy Quran does not say that at all. According to the Holy Quran, some of the religious rites and worships are carried out with reference to the sun, and some with reference to the moon. So the Holy Quran implies both these references for determining time. For instance, Ramadan is recognized by the lunar movements, etc. And the daily prayers are governed by the solar movements, which are far greater in number. So to say that this is Islamic and that is not, this is wrong. The Holy Quran specifically mentions that we have created the sun and the moon to teach you mathematics. This is a very profound statement. All human progress is based on mathematics. Well, all sciences need mathematics. Without that, the science cannot be advanced by a few steps. And the Holy Quran says they are created for you so that you can learn mathematics. And no mathematics can be conceived without the precise, correct movements and speeds of the sun and the moon. Every mathematics is born out of man's concept of what is happening in the heavens, particularly in relation to the sun and the moon. So all pyramids are built by that philosophy, that concept in view. They all, through judging or monitoring the movements of the sun and their relativity, have sometimes worked such highly complex systems of mathematics that even the mathematicians today are amazed at how they could do it. And the system of figures and everything revolves around this concept of the sun and the moon. So to call one to be Islamic and other not to be Islamic is absolutely absurd. Right? As I said, most often it is the sun which is taken to be the guiding factor for our religious rites, etc. Please.
Assalamu alaikum. Here is my question. What are the main reasons nowadays to follow the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ rather than the other prophets, whereas the Holy Quran says, chapter 4, verse 153, those who believe in Allah and in all of these messengers and make no distinction between any of them, these are they whom He will soon give their rewards. Allah is most forgiving.
But you have not recited the full verse. It begins with the mention of those who believe in the Holy Prophet, in fact.
Yeah.
In this context, that is the first mention, but then after that it is said also those who believe in God and other prophets, etc. Or prophets are not mentioned anywhere, in fact. But the implication is obvious. When Imam Sahib reads it from the Holy Quran and translates it, then you will know what I mean. No prophet is mentioned anywhere, but the first faith is mentioned as undefined, unspecified, which according to my argument evidently applies to the people of the Holy Prophet's time and those who believe in him. Then the faith is mentioned with reference to God and not with reference to prophets again, with reference to God and with reference to how it shapes your conduct in life, amal salihah, and also a belief in the hereafter. And discussing these other categories, the Holy Quran specifically speaks of people of different religious denominations, the Jews, the Christians, etc. But the faith in a particular prophet is not mentioned. See? So this style of expression has some definite significance, to which I'll return later, but let the Imam Sahib first read the verse.
So the verse he has pointed out is like this. That is the one. In Surah Nisa, verse number 153.
Right.
Allah Almighty says, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرُسُلِهِ وَلَمْ يُفَرِّقُوا بَيْنَ أَحَدٍ مِّنْهُمْ.
That's a different verse altogether than the one I thought you were referring to. I'm sorry. That's a different subject altogether. I'm glad that you quoted the verse. Now we'll restart the answer from there. Please.
وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرُسُلِهِ وَلَمْ يُفَرِّقُوا بَيْنَ أَحَدٍ مِّنْهُمْ أُولَٰئِكَ سَوْفَ يُؤْتِيهِمْ أُجُورَهُمْ وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا.
That's right.
And those who believe in Allah and in all his messengers and make no distinction between any of them, to such he will soon give their rewards, and Allah is most forgiving, merciful.
Evidently, you could not omit Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the list of prophets mentioned here. The one who received this revelation and passes it on to you, the mankind, how could he himself be excluded from the list of prophets? Is the first prophet, you know, from whom you receive this revelation. So that argument is not sound at all. It's not based on anything. You understand the point?
I understand, exactly.
What he wanted to ask was, when all other prophets can lead to God, why must we believe in Prophet Muhammad Rasulullah Sallam? The verse does not say that. The verse says that if you believe in all the prophets of God, not one of the prophets of God, if you believe in all the prophets of God and do not discriminate or differentiate between one and the others, then Allah promises you that He will reward you and you have nothing to fear. So, in this is the message of Islam, this is the distinction of Islam, which is referred to, which is in fact contained in this verse. Islam is the only religion which requires its believers to believe in all the prophets and not to differentiate between them, because as messengers of God they should be held in equal honor. As messengers of God they must be believed in. As messengers of God, their wahi or revelation should not be treated as less than the revelation of another prophet, because the messenger is only carrying a message. His own person does not matter. Even if a peon brings a message of the queen or the prime minister of a country does so, the message remains the same and it must be followed. This is the meaning of no difference. But the other verses of the Quran clearly speak of the difference in status between one prophet and another. And that is something which Allah knows best. It's better to avoid such discussions. Right? unless specified by God, we should not go on guessing who is better and who is less, and so on and so forth. Please.
Okay.
Your turn.
Please, Huzu, hell is a place of cure for sinners according to Islamic belief.
Huh?
Hell is a place of cure for sinners according to Islamic belief. Please, how does it happen?
Health is a place.
Hell, H-E-L. Hell.
Oh, I'm sorry. When you were talking of cure, I thought of health.
No. Hell.
Hell
Yeah.
is a penitentiary, isn't it?
No, I'm saying it's a place of cure for
yes.
sinners.
Yes.
So how does it happen?
Haven't you ever experienced it here in this life? When you commit a mistake,
Yes, please.
whether in worldly affairs or in religious affairs, social, political or economical affairs, when you suffer from the loss or the consequences of that mistake, then you go through hell. And that hell teaches you a lesson, not to repeat it. You understand? So you already know the answer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My question is about Laylatul Qadr, and if there can only be one or maybe two during a Ramzan. The reason because my mother, for the first time, kept itikaf in Mauritius this year, and she tells me that she had two experiences, one on the night of the 23rd and one on the night of the 27th, both of which were quite moving. And I was just wondering whether both can be Laylatul Qadr or...
See, the word Laylatul Qadr has been generally misunderstood. The term Laylatul Qadr, I have explained it in my sermons repeatedly, and the essence of what I understand is that moment when man's life is so permanently transformed into a life of a godly person, that it can never return back to its original faulty and materialistic ways. That is Laylatul Qadr. Because the Laylatul Qadr in the Holy Quran explains it, the surah verse, not the verse but the chapter, small chapter, explains the Laylatul Qadr in these terms. That if anybody who is blessed with witnessing the Laylatul Qadr, his entire life, that moment is better than his entire life, which means the blessing of Laylatul Qadr extends to the whole of one's life. The word life is not used there. It is said khairun min alf shahr. It is better than 1,000 months. Now Laylatul Qadr, the word Laylatul Qadr, or the experience of Laylatul Qadr, I should say, cannot be had by the children for whom Sharia or the Quranic law is not compulsory as yet, who are below that age when they have responsibility for their actions. So 1,000 months make how many years?
83 years and 4 months.
Huh?
83 years and 4 months.
83 years. Add to that the child life before, and this becomes the maximum span of life we experience here on earth. See, if you add only 17 years, then it becomes 100. So practically, it doesn't mean that every man must live 100 years. Normally this is the maximum age which most people reach, or some people reach. So the Laylatul Qadr is better than the entire age. That is the life of man. How could it be better than the whole age of man, the whole life of man, if it had not left an indelible imprint on that life, so that it overwhelmed it and purified it? So from that I infer that experience has a very special significance, and only the life to come till death will decide definitely whether it was just an emotional spiritual experience or it was exactly that Laylatul Qadr which is defined in the Holy Quran in these terms. Got it?
Yes.
Thank you.
So, yes. In relation to the survival of Christ at the crucifixion, where can I direct my studies to see the evidence of this and of his travels later in Kashmir?
There are so many books written on this subject by various scholars, but first of all, the most important book ever written on this subject, and the first ever written on this subject, was the one written by Hazrat Masih Maud Islam, the founder of Ahmadiyya Jamaat, under the title Jesus in India. So if you read it and reread it, then you'll know how powerful the arguments are in favor of that. But that was an age when all the evidence was not yet unearthed. So Hazrat Masih Maud Islam, the founder of the community, also prophesied that the discovery of this grave was not divinely guided in the sense that God told him through revelation, go to that place and there you will find the grave, and so on and so forth. It appeared to be accidental, but that accident seems to be ordained, organized. It happened it all began with a letter addressed to Hazrat Masih Maud Islam by one of his companions from Jammu in Kashmir. His name was Nuruddin, Khalifa Nuruddin, but not the first caliph. His name was also Nuruddin. It was a different Khalifa Nuruddin. He happened to live for some time in Srinagar, and he came to learn our grave, which was held in a very high esteem. And the reports say that a holy person is buried in that grave whose name was Yusuf. So when he further inquired about who Yusuf was, and he had no knowledge that this word is also mentioned in the Bible, in the New Testament, the valley of Yusuf and so on and so forth. And it still is a mystery who yet Yusuf was, and whether it's a visionary something or actually history unfolded itself in a way that Yusuf played an important role in the early history of Christianity. These are the questions which cannot be definitely answered as yet. But returning to the issue of the discovery of this grave, he inquired further, and he was amazed to learn that this Yusuf visited India or Kashmir in a pre-Islamic era. This was the most, significant part of this tale. And he realized it. He said, could it be Jesus, Yusuf, could be a different pronunciation of Jesus in Kashmir, or other possible explanations could also be suggested, which were suggested at that time, that Yusuf is in fact a name given to Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, Hazrat Jesus himself. But other scholars, Christian scholars, believe Yusuf had a different, distinct personality, he was a separate person. But that Yusuf is never known to have travelled beyond Palestine and into Kashmir, India or other places. So this person, whoever it was, had to be, discovered as far as his identity goes with reference to history. This is the question which started at that time. Hazrat Masih Maud agreed with his conclusion, the conclusion of Khalifa Nuruddin, that it seems to be Jesus Christ himself. Then Hazrat Masih Maud started investigating through all the books of history which were relevant to the issue, or those books which incidentally mentioned the life of Jesus after crucifixion and so on and so forth. So in this historic book of Jesus in India, he has collected all the material, and this is something which should be particularly understood by you, because some material is not trustworthy from the point of view of its contradictions in relation to some other material. But Hazrat Masih Maud with the scholarly integrity has produced all the references which he read and he thought could be further analyzed and investigated by scholars to come. So that is a warning I must give to the reader, that it doesn't mean that if something is found to be wrong, the book should be rejected as unauthentic or unreliable. The whole argument runs around this issue that a person, a holy person, at the time of Jesus Christ is seen walking into Kashmir by the chroniclers who have recorded this fact, by the annalists at the time of one Raja who belonged to the dynasty of Shalbahans. So he is referred to as Shalbahan. But because this is not made clear in that book, some people misunderstand the word Shalbahan. They understand it to be the personal name of that Raja in whose time a figure like Messiah walked into the valley of Kashmir along with some of his companions. Now this is the most central part of that argument built by Hazrat Masih Maud, because still in all the Hindu literature, in the Puranas, that incident is recorded exactly as it is quoted by Jamaat-e-Ahmadiyya. Even you can go to any temple here and find out, tell them the reference of Shalban, they would turn out their book and say, yes, there it is. Now what it records is amazingly close to the image of Jesus Christ. It says that one Raja Shalbahan, and again I must give you the warning that this Raja Shalbahan is not the personal name of a Raja. It's a dynasty like Pharaoh, like pharaohs and so on. So one Raja, that is the ruler of Kashmir, who belonged to the dynasty of Shalbahans. He was once out on a hunting expedition when he noticed a foreigner, a distinguished looking foreigner, in company of some of his followers in entourage, walking into the valley. And he was so impressive and so noble looking, so robed like an honorable person, that the Raja approached him himself and inquired from him who he was. The answer was, I am a foreigner who is visiting your land. And then he said, my name is Mashihu. Here he doesn't say Yusuf at all. There the name mentioned in this Hindu script is Masihu, because the Kashmiris exchange the word Sin for Sheen, like Kasir has become Kashir and then Kashmir. So the written record says the answer was, I am Mashihu. My name is Masihu. I am a prophet of God. My people treated me so cruelly that they left no stone unturned to kill me and murder me. But God miraculously saved me. And after that, I have migrated to this land of yours, Kashmir. Now this account is so clearly preserved up to now that unless somebody is blinded by prejudice, you can't miss the significance and the similarity of the application of this to the time of Jesus Christ, to the person of Jesus Christ. We are carrying some more research into it, and we are a young man from America by the name of Usman is working day in and day out on the discovery of new material and archaeological proofs, etc., etc. And he has made already a great breakthrough. He also visited Tibet, met the lamas and the Pancha Lama and this and that, and tried to find out the recorded evidence of Jesus' presence as a Buddha in India. And there are some reports that there is also some evidence preserved in the great historic library of the Buddhist chiefs in Tibet, not in Sri Lanka but in Tibet. There are two different branches. This is the major one, which is based in Tibet. So he went there, he saw some evidence of the books, he inquired from the custodian of the library, and he confirmed. I can't show you without the permission of my chiefs, but I confirmed that there does exist such a document, which is kept in the name of this foreign Buddha, Masihu. Now he was called Masiha, not Masiha but Masihu. And also he was given some other titles. One of them is Mithriya. Masih can also be mispronounced as Mathi. So under the title, a prophecy is mentioned in the literature, Hindu literature, also perhaps in Buddhist literature, which refer to the Masa not as Mashihu but as a Mithriya. But more important than these prophecies is the prophecy of Buddha, blessings and peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. Buddha came around 500 some years before Jesus Christ. And Buddha prophesied that he would pay a revisit to this world around 500 years hence. And he said, I would come as a foreign Buddha. This is amazing. The word he uses for his revisit can literally be translated as a foreign Buddha, not a local one. So exactly at the time prophesied by Buddha, Jesus appears there. Or one person known to be a Messiah, who claims to be Messiah, who claimed that he was crucified, not crucified, but he was almost put to death. But God saved him. Now, 2 and 2 make 4. I mean, this is the simple mathematics of that. But another angle from which we can look at it to reassure us that we are on the right lines of inference is that at that time of Jesus Christ, no other known prophet in the entire world is recorded anywhere who, because of torture and under pain of punishment, had to migrate from his country and disappear somewhere. Not one. I've searched, I've scanned the whole history of religion of that period, and I could not find a single prophet anywhere in the world under the name of prophet or son of God or God, whatever name you give, who had to migrate his country and disappear elsewhere, except Jews. So read them together And then you realize that it is not just a myth that we believe in, it is a reality of history. But as Hazrat Masih prophesied, more evidence is being unearthed now, which points its finger again to Jesus Christ having migrated from Palestine after the attempt to crucify him, and delivered his message to the people of Kashmir who belonged to the Israelites. Again, another corroborating factor which cannot be ignored, because Jesus had promised that before that he would leave his people and go in search of the lost sheep of the house of Israel. This is a very definite promise vouched by him to the people, to his own followers. That again is a very strong evidence in favor of the Ahmadiyya view that he did not ascend to heaven but went to Kashmir. Ascension to heaven would be a breach of his own promise, because no lost sheep of the house of Israel can be traced to heaven, disappeared into the heaven. But on this point, that after the diaspora of the Jews, since the invasion of Nebuchadnezzar, during that diaspora they spread out right up to the Kashmir and Kab, Afghanistan and elsewhere, and that is why their features are so telltale. Their features do not belong to the people of the subcontinent as such. Of course, many people have settled in India from different countries, and it's a historical process, ongoing historical process. But the features of the people of Afghanistan and the features of the people of Kashmir are so closely similar to those of the Jewish people that no sane man can shut his eyes to this fact. And that is why the historians today are almost, I don't say entirely, but I believe at least almost unanimous. Because to my knowledge, nobody disagrees with this fact, that these people do not belong to the races of the subcontinent India or other neighboring countries. They are typically Jewish in nature, in character, in features. Secondly, their nomenclature is exactly Jewish. Amazingly, no such nomenclature is found anywhere in India except in the case of the people settled in Afghanistan or Kashmir. You see, Isakhel, Musakhel, and the names of all the tribes are the known names of tribes of Israel. And their personal names are also like exactly on the style of the Israelite names. The same is true of Kashmiris. There are such places who are named the throne of Moses, the seat of Jesus, this and that, all speaking of a history which has no relationship with the history of Kashmir as such. Why should it be there? So this building corroborating evidence, it becomes more powerful as you persuade further. And apart from that, it's the question why Jesus should have lost his own primary title of Messiah. Why should he have lost that into something which was not his original title, that is Buddha? This is a question which sometimes is raised by the skeptics, and they say, all right, all the evidence could be accepted, but where did he disappear? If Jesus had come to regain the lost sheep of the house of Israel, that sheep should have remembered him as a Messiah, and should not have completely lost the memory of his visit to India, etc. Now, this is a very important question which has to be satisfactorily and logically answered. In my opinion, this already has been answered, because when I mentioned that Hazrat Buddha, Gautam Buddha, prophesied that a foreign Buddha would come, because the people who were Buddhists had become Buddhists. The Jewish people were not from the Christian stock, therefore from the Jewish stock, and they had converted to Buddhism, and this is again a historical fact, both in Afghanistan and in Kashmir. In Afghanistan and in Kashmir, prior to the visit of Jesus Christ, they had all become Buddhists. So if to Buddhists a prophet comes and calls to the path of Allah, and he has to prove his identity as a prophet with reference to Buddha. So he must have told them, I am that Buddha, reborn, that Buddha, whose new advent was to be the advent of a foreigner. And as such, he earned the title of Buddha. And all the records mention Jesus, which mention Jesus, mention him as a Buddha. And sometimes the original title is overwhelmed, if not altogether blotted out, it is overwhelmed by a new title, like in the case of Hazrat Masih Maud himself, the founder of the Ahmadiyya community. His primary title was Imam Mahdi. In this capacity, he was to be the Imam of the Muslims. His secondary title was Messiah, the promised Messiah. Now, the promised Messiah is all again a foreign title, isn't it? Foreign to Islam. Mahdi, Imam Mahdi, the guided one, the guided Imam is the Islamic title itself. But Messiah, everybody knows, was before Islam even began. So the title of Messiah is a foreign title as much as the title of Buddha was to Messiah. And the old first title was lost and the new became predominant in case of Jesus Christ. So also it had to happen in case of Hazrat Masih Islam, who claimed to be so closely similar to Jesus Christ. So in my opinion, that is not a problem at all. Sometimes some religious traces are completely wiped out by the new dominant religions who replace the older ones. There are the traces of the religion of the English people. There are the traces of the religion of the Norwegian people. Of course you can read them in history and see them in films, but in reality there is no trace. And some traces are so wiped out so completely that even it's difficult for the historians to reach any documents which could lead them on to the original nature of the religions which ruled prior to Christianity in Europe. In case of Germany, Wotan is the god of Germany in whom all the Germans believed. But hardly any German would know the name of Wotan today. We investigated the matter further by collecting the material on Wotan, and the material is so insignificant and small and unreliable because it has been reported by some Christian sources earlier, who of course hated Wotanism. So practically all the traces are lost. What you have of Wotanism today is by reports of Christian missionaries or priests who were rather extremely prejudicial and stiff in their ideology and doctrines. And they would dub all other religions as false, meaningless, and this and that. This is what they had been doing to Islam, of course. Until this age of illumination, the previous histories of Europe believed in an Islam which is so unbelievably untrue and mythical, which has nothing to do with real Islam. So why would they not do it to Wotan, and why would not do it to Beowulf and others in the northern regions in Scandinavia? This is quite natural. So if Jesus Christ appeared in Kashmir as a Buddha, ultimately his relationship with Buddha dominated everything else. And the other references were left for the historians to trace back. But Jesus is still known to have said things referring to his past, like the one reference with which we began. And also in some documents which we are now tracing and trying to have some possession of the documents or their authentic photocopies, they are reported by the scholar to have many other clues about Jesus Christ being the Buddha. So some literature is already there, you can have access, but some is in the process of being, produced, because the scientific investigation and scholarly research requires quite some time, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Huzur, my question relates to a Pakistani or Indian practice. It's when a baby is born, there are some Pakistani or Indian, they tend to put like a flat plate on the baby's head or a rubber band, right?
It has no religious significance.
I just want
to... It's a matter of taste or distaste. I personally prefer the English style of heads. It's slightly elongated and not too flat in the back and too flat in the front. And in our family, we have never done this, what you call Pakistani practice. We generally like the round shaped, not perfectly round, because that also doesn't appear nice to us. So I said, this is why I said it's a matter of taste or distaste, whatever you call it. But it has nothing to do with religion. Nothing.
No, but does it affect in the development of the child in any way, favorably?
I doubt if it does. Unless you press the head too far until it begins to hurt the brain within. That's a different story. Otherwise, the shape of the head is just the same thing. Won't make much difference, I mean. Right?
Thank you.
Please.
My second question is, when will the Third World War, nuclear, start? I mean, after which process, how Ahmadis will be saved? Or do you think we can prevent
you see, it's not a question of Ahmadis in relation to the Third World War, because in fact it presents Ahmadiyya in a very narrow dimension. You must never permit yourself to forget that Ahmadiyya is Islam. So the question should be when Islam would spread. We only use the title Ahmadiyya to help people understand that we do not belong to the common mass known as Sunni or mainstream Muslims. So we have this identity. Our understanding of Islam is different from theirs. But when you talk of religious victories, the grand slam victory of Islam over the rest of the world, then the word Ahmadiyya is insignificant. So do it with reference to Islam. When it will emerge as victorious, and when, of course, you can mention Ahmadiyya, and we do believe that Allah will give Ahmadiyya this great opportunity to be mainly instrumental in bringing about that grand victory. Right?
Yes.
But you should also remember that when you say the Third World War, you must have some promise of Allah in your mind. Right?
Yes.
What is that promise which you had in mind? So why did you say Third World War? And why shouldn't we say the Fifth World War?
I read something from you. I read something from you.
The fact is that the atomic holocaust, which is being feared by the world more and more, has become not only a possibility but a great probability, because the present nuclear weapons have the potential to destroy the entire planet Earth many times over. Not once, twice, 3, 7 times, even more. So this is why perhaps one can say that the Third World War will bode ill for the mankind. But will the entire mankind be destroyed? If it is, then there is no question of Christianity or Islam or any other religion inheriting from that great global affliction. But according to the Quran, that would not be the end all of humanity at all. According to the Holy Quran, the great world powers will be reduced to smithereens, and their pride will be broken and pulverized. The great world powers would be so humbled that would be the psychological state of their minds when they would be naturally become ready to accept the Holy Prophet of Islam and his message. And this is clearly specified in the Holy Quran, in Surah Taha, 16th chapter. So if you want to have reference, you can go through that. Now this shows, it doesn't say the third. This is our estimation that the way things are moving, it could be the Third World War. After that, the Holy Quran gives the reasons why people would begin to turn to Islam, because the great mountains of political worldly powers would be, as I said, pulverized and spread evenly as if it had become a desert of sand. Then the Holy Quran says they will follow the Prophet who has no crookedness about him. That is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that is what's going to happen. But you already believe this will happen. Why do you wish to suffer through all that agonizing experience of the Third World War?
Yeah.
Which will wipe out many believers as well in the large sweep of annihilation, not by way of punishment but by way of a natural consequence of this. Many true believers will also be wiped out from the face of earth, but enough will be kept alive to inherit the next world. Right?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Yes, Huzu, my question is, in the Holy Quran, we have been described the non-believers as the people of the book. Please, Huzu, explain.
People of the book?
Yes, please.
The people of the book means any people who derive their law from divine revelation. All such people can be referred to as the people of the book. As against that, all the man-made philosophies or idolatrous philosophies are categorized as non-people of the book, people who do not belong to a book. Right?
So can we say the non-Ahmadis also to be the people of the book?
In a sense, yes. But we don't refer to them as the people of the book, because that would signify that they are either the Jews or the Christians. Because this term has, during the passage of time, has been applied by the mainstream Muslims only to two major religions, Judaism and Christianity. So if you apply the same term technically you may be right, but in reality that term would become misleading. Then it would seem that you are claiming that these people do not belong to Islam and they belong either to Judaism or to Christianity, which is a misstatement. So better be careful in the choice of your words.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Please.
Hazur, the promised Messiah, ﷺ, has said that after, or has explained further, the state after someone dies and before the Day of Judgment, they're given another body which reflects, the state.
An astral body.
An astral body.
Yes.
And he has recounted his experiences in wakeful states, where we've seen people who have died, either being light or shadow. How does this relate to the stories of ghosts, etc.? Is this the same thing?
It does not relate to the stories of ghosts at all. All these experiences are visions. They are not actual precipitation from nowhere of some spirit in the form of a human being. Because it is evident, I don't know why people are misled. Because the spirits do not wear dresses. The spirits do not have the same human form. They are not confined to a sharp bodily lines, and the map of humans. So when they are seen as humans, dressed properly like humans are. How can you permit yourself to imagine that it will the real spirits who appeared all dressed up? Can an astral body be dressed up in material dresses? See? So it is so evident. I'm really amazed at people who try to conclude from this that spirit ghosts also exist. They are just messages from God, and they are well organized messages which intend to create the impression that you are really meeting a real person, so that it brings with it all the emotions and things when you meet a real person whom you have lost, who is so dear to you. Or even sometimes a hateable person is produced to create the negative impression. But they are not real. The only thing to be remembered is that the experience is real in the sense that God does provide you the opportunity of knowing the thoughts of that soul wherever that is. And whatever you say in answer is conveyed to that soul. Like talking to people through television. When we look at the image seems to be addressing us directly from a short distance where the television is placed, while it is just an apparition, but not an apparition in the sense of a ghost. It is an apparition which is most certainly true. And if you have two-way television system contact, then despite the fact that the distances remain as big as they are, you seem to talk to each other. So this thing is invented because God had it there as a potential for us. And through spiritual transcommunication, God can create such illusions which seem to be illusions, but they are real in the sense that actually the transfer of information takes place. Communication does take place. Understand?
Yes.
Please.
Sir, yes. Why is it that the hand of God can be seen in small blessings very often, but He does not always appear to intervene in many tragic circumstances, such as babies dying in Africa or other parts of the world?
This is a question which is a very profound question and which requires a very large answer, well documented and based on sound logic. On that I have already written in my book, which is which will soon be in print, inshallah, I hope. And there, immediately after the chapter of Zoroastrianism, you will find this chapter of suffering, accidents, design, this and blessing and suffering, and the comparison and so on. And wait for that until you get hold of that book. I hope very strongly that you will be satisfied after reading the answers.
Okay, sir.
And that is the end of the time as well. Thank you.
Thank you.